bias, you're a bigot or a homophobe. That's basically akin to racism now, that the language is very loaded, and so we're not allowed to say, well, I don't think that's the best thing to promote. If you speak like we are, we'd be called bigots and homophobes. Now that actually, the children are going to school and being told their parents are bigots or homophobes. I remember my son coming home from school when he was in primary school saying, Mum, you're a drug addict. And I said, why is that? Because I drink coffee every day. So the message now is advanced to not just are you a drug addict, but you're a bigot and a homophobe.
So this essentially inserts a lever into the family.
Yes, it's a wedge.
It disturbs a parent's right to raise their own child according to their faith, which I understand is something guaranteed even by international treaties.
Yes, exactly. The UN Human Rights, I've just forgotten the actual agreement, but yes, we have a right, a human right, to raise your children according to your own beliefs and values and religion. So this is a matter of actually just values. It's, not necessarily, it crosses religions, it crosses into people who are irreligious. It's just common values, and we have to we can accommodate lots of different religions in society, but I think the big thing is that we have to have common core values to be a cohesive society.
Let me ask you something else. I've heard people say that they genuinely want to raise their children in the normal heterosexual mould, which is the way of traditions and society for millennia.
Yeah.
But they are afraid. They're afraid to speak up. There is a tremendous, there is a hovering fear over expression of their traditional values. What do you think can be done about shaking off this intimidation which exists in our society, about people expressing what they truly feel and believe?
Well, I think there's two issues. One of them is courage and one of them is decency. We do need to be courageous, and we do need to speak up as we are and say that, our motivation is not hatred for other people, but love for life, love for family, love for faith, love for freedom. That's the motivation. It's not hate for other people. We need to have courage to be able to speak out, and there has to be a level of decency that unfortunately we haven't seen in public life too much, where we can speak decently about issues. The trouble is that if you just start calling people bigots and homophobes and all the other names, you're not talking about the issue, you're just name calling. And so I think the biggest hindrance is these two things, that we lack courage. We don't want to be, crossing over our vilification laws and being accused of this, that or the other. And people tend to get pushed to the limit and then explode, because they've been suppressed when they explode. It's not in a way that's decent and honouring and respectful of other people.
So I see that this could be, in a sense, an election which invites people to express their conscience with courage.
With courage and with decency. And I just think that we have to be able to stand up, be courageous, but try and bring some decency to the conversation. This is not about hating people. This is about being a voice for children, not legislating to create fatherlessness. We know the cost of fatherlessness in society. It's well documented, and here we are wanting to legislate in favour of it. We've got a very, what we call, sorry history in Australia. We've had public apology from then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd saying that we were sorry that certain individuals didn't get the opportunity to have a mum and a dad. And yet now we want to replay that history and deny other children the legal possibility. I call it children equality. Surely the law should be there to give the most vulnerable in any relationship. It should be there to protect
What
them.
you're referring to is that through the procreation of the traditional family, a child has biological parents.
That's right.
They have identity, instead of concocting children for a homosexual union, which cannot afford the biological continuity.
No, they can't. Well, a child has this innate need to know their mum and their dad. So whether or not, I never met my father, but you can have a stepfather, you can have a grandfather, but you always want to know, who am I? I just found out the other day that my father had a Polish heritage, but I never knew that. I was 54 when I found out. So, but you never stop wondering, who am I?
I was once told by a homosexual, who I regard as a friend, that he believes that homosexuals need a father and a mother also.
Yes.
And in some ways, the culture which imposes a destiny on homosexuals, which says this is the way you are, this is the way you can only ever be, and you will belong in a different category. It's a deprivation and a betrayal of the homosexual themselves.
Yes.
Do you have a thought about that? Do you think this is fair to homosexuals?
No.
In other words,
Well, it's not fair, and I do actually think that, see, what we're doing in the schools is promoting gender confusion, if you like. I think the homosexual community, who have already suffered with confusion, should be more compassionate to imposing that on children. You know, we shouldn't impose confusion, but everybody needs a mum and a dad, everybody.
and of course there is a great spectrum amongst homosexuals themselves. There are many who may find it difficult to take on a heterosexual lifestyle, but there is a range, a number of people who actually can find their way to a heterosexual lifestyle, a spectrum. And when we say, when we foreclose that possibility, we say this as the attempt to ban all forms of conversion or reparative therapy comes and says there is no circumstance in which you could have your own children, no circumstance in which you could develop into a heterosexual role. I find it's a kind of determinism which is placed on the homosexual, him or herself, to say your destiny is locked in. Whereas every human being, I presume, has got a body and a soul. Our bodies very often draw us in one direction. Our souls are telling us something else. And that's part of life. There is a struggle which goes on.
And it's not, well, that's right. I mean, you can't just say because someone has the orientation to be, an adulterer or this or that,
or a thief or anything of that sort.
That they can just follow their impulses. And that is the trouble, is that the education is about following impulses instead of thinking rationally. And we need to think what the consequences of things are. The other thing that is so important is that abstinence is never presented as an option. You must, if you feel like it, you must do it. Then why should we expect people to suicide? Why should we expect they'll experiment in high-risk behaviours if we send the message that if you feel like it, do it? Abstinence should be presented as a good option. If in doubt, go without.
That applies to people of all sexes in different situations and different circumstances. It means waiting till marriage or whatever it might mean. As Viktor Frankl said, nobody ever died from abstinence.
No.
But on the other hand, people have died from non-abstinence.
That's right.
But of course, we want people to have a happy relationship.
Of course
but hopefully, this should be in a way of the traditional values which were passed on.
I know, but the idea that we are just a sexual being, and without that, somehow, we're not a human, we're not expressing ourselves. Now that is a lie. That is a lie. There are lots of people that have been great contributors to society that didn't see themselves as sexual beings. So, the fact is that I think society has got to decide, do they want this sexual stuff imposed? Everywhere you look, it's promoting sexuality, and it's all about you as a sexual being. I heard a sad story the other day about a little boy who's 10 years old in a Sunday school who's addicted to pornography because it's so accessible, doesn't know what to do with it. 10 years old. It's terrible. It's these impressions on the mind that will alter the mind without getting help. Would alter the mind.
And I think it's a point which could be made about religion in general. Religion is not against sexuality. Religion says that sexuality has a role. It needs to, when it's fused with purpose, it enhances. But when it becomes a principle in itself and unto itself, it's just destructive. It can be destructive.
That's right.
Let me take you to another point, if I may.
Sure.
The Labour Party is saying that it wants to undo current legislation and to take religious schools out of the category of an exemption in the area of the ability to discriminate in the employment of staff based on various lifestyle considerations. In other words, what it's saying now is that if a religious school wants to appoint a maths teacher whose let's say sexual orientation, etc., and so on, and preferences do not go with the school ethos, then they have to justify that and prove that these things are necessary to function within a religious school. The onus is placed on the religious school to justify to a secular tribunal why they are choosing staff with certain characteristics. Whether it affirms the school ethos or doesn't contradict the school ethos. Is this? How do you look at it?
Look, this is completely over the top. It's extreme. I used to work in recruitment, and the questions that we used to ask when we were, you know, wanting to assist someone with their recruitment, one of them would be, what sort of culture do you wish to promote in your organisation? And how would you describe your culture here so we can best fit someone into this organisation? That was one of the questions. We want to, you know, get the feel for your culture and get somebody who's a good match, because that will be making it a cohesive, happy workplace for everybody. So it's quite normal to recruit someone who will fit your organisational culture. So therefore, a faith culture, why should they be exempted from that privilege? Why should employers not be able to employ who they want to employ? It's a complete overreach into the personal lives of people, the private lives of people, private organisations, and even public organisations. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'm sure one thing is for certain, and that is that political parties and officers are allowed to select their personnel based on compatibility.
Well,
nobody ever opposed that.
No, well, I can't see the Labor Party hiring a Liberal secretary, can you?
No, I can't. Final question, and that is with regard to the availability of religious education in state schools for those children who want it. Now, I think, so far as I know, only the Greens oppose it outright. But I've noticed that the new review of the national curriculum does recommend a restoration of the place of spirituality and values in education. Apparently, the Melbourne Declaration, which was a foundation document for all the states some years back, in 3 places mentions the importance of spirituality as a component of education. Now, obviously, we're not seeking to impose this. We're just imposing this on those who don't want it. But what are your thoughts on a truly adequate option for children from religious families who go to state schools?
Look, I just think that we all are spiritual beings, and we need to feed that spiritual aspect to our lives, and we have to fill it with something. And I just honestly believe that the offering that in schools to fill it with good, you know, spiritual values. You can argue over whether a story is a story, a parable, or whatever, but there's meanings in stories. It's the way that we have communicated from, you know, the beginning of time. People tell a story, get the meaning of the story, get the principle. It feeds the soul. There was a good, you know, moral principle. Forgiveness works, or, you know, there's a higher ground here. We can go for it. You know, just puts the. I'm thinking of the story of David and Bathsheba, was it? Bathsheba? And then was it Nathan who said, you know, and that and the guy who came and took the sheep, and that was you. And he tells a story to send a message. And you see, we all, children and adults alike, can get the message. We can get big concepts early in life about the way we treat other people, about honesty, integrity, forgiveness, and all these important things that build character. We can get them from, in this case, biblical stories. Why would we deny building up character, especially knowing that there's so many broken families out there, so many people who haven't heard a good story or a reason to step up to the higher ground, because parents haven't been parented and they're not able to parent as well in some of these areas and give people meaning for life. I just think it's very, very important.
So do you think it's right to say that withholding this from children is depriving them of something important?
Yes.
If they want it.
If they want it, yes. They don't, you know, if parents refuse to, you know, they seem to think it's some terrible thing, well, then they can teach them their own values, and that's a human right too. But I think it's depriving children of some of a long identity, you know, identifying with you know, humanity and the struggles throughout the centuries and all this sort of thing, and seeing people overcome against great odds. I mean, you know, the David and Goliath stories, they're fantastic, and they give children hope and a narrative to work their own life in, you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.